The numbers have been on the rise here in India as far as the COVID-19 cases are concerned. In fact, a recent ICMR report now suggests that the slum-dwelling people will be way more vulnerable. There are signs, perhaps, even though if not labeled so, of community transmission. But at the same time, you have a country here in the world where the Prime Minister said that she did a dance. We are talking about Jacinda Ardern, because New Zealand declared itself COVID-free. And how exactly did the country achieve that? What are the lessons to be learned, despite, of course, the complete difference in sizes, population, the very nature of the countries between India and New Zealand? I'm joined here in this conversation for ETV Bharat by Mukesh Pardeshi. He is India's envoy to New Zealand, has formerly served, of course, in the headquarters in Delhi and also been India's ambassador to Mexico. Appreciate you joining us, High Commissioner Pardeshi, on the show.
Thank you, Smita, to have me on your show. No, I'm very fortunate to be living at this point of time in New Zealand. It had become a role model by declaring itself free of coronavirus. On 9th June, New Zealand became one of the 9 countries in the world which are free of coronavirus. The other countries are like Montenegro in Europe. We have a Pacific country like Samoa. They have also declared themselves COVID-19 free. But New Zealand has caught the imagination because this is a country, developed country, industrialized country, and have well connected with the Western world. Since 29th May, there has been no new cases here. So the total number has been 1,504 with 22 deaths. So this has been very encouraging as there have been no new cases. They have been able to contain. And now New Zealand is striving to stamp out coronavirus from its borders. There are several things which have been in favor of New Zealand, as you said, size, and also the population density. It's 5 million people, but in terms of geographical size, it's quite spread out. So people are all over the country, and segregation and self-isolation were much easier here than, for example, in India.
In India, I mean, we have seen one of the strictest lockdowns globally happen in India. And despite that, of course, we've seen the sharp rise in numbers. As you mentioned there, in fact, in terms of the population density, because it's lower. But give our audience a sense of the personal observations that you may have seen that, when it came to individual responsibility or government sort of measures, even during the lockdown or without the lockdown, a practical sort of approach that New Zealand may have adopted to the issue.
I think one of the most practical thing they did, in the very first week, they developed a 4-stage health alarm system. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 being the highest level. So in March, around 20th March, they declared first level. And immediately within 3-4 days, they went to level 4 because they realized that this may spread here. Most of the transmission in the beginning came from abroad because as students or other travelers returned from Iran and China. So they closed the borders with those countries. They brought in effect a 4-stage health alarm system. And constantly people were being educated. What will happen at stage 1? When they publicized, they already had informed people what will happen in stage 4. So when the Prime Minister took the country to higher level of health alert system, people were geared up to those challenges. So I would say the dissemination about the health alarm system has been the excellent example here, how the government can take people in confidence. Prime Minister has a very high approval rating, so people cooperated with the government, the caution system. People responded, and they reposed enormous faith in what the government was doing. I would say that the clear messaging, consistent, and the early warning system which they developed has been in favor of New Zealand.
But having said that, while it has declared itself virus free for now, we've also seen South Korea as being a model example in how they dealt with COVID. Yet there are those fears of a second wave now arriving in several countries that have had a successful approach. So, how is New Zealand really looking at these concerns? What are the kind of maybe restrictive measures, if any, that will still continue to be there on the ground?
What as of now, from 9th June, we are at the health alarm stage 1. So it's not completely normal, but the social gatherings, and there are no travel restrictions now. The economy is back to normal, I would say 95%. The borders are closed. So during the stage 1, the borders, no foreigners are being allowed. The only people who are being coming in repatriation flights, they are allowed, and they go into 14 days government quarantine system. The recent last week, when Air India flew their passengers from India, they were taken to government-supported quarantine system. So government is taking care of 14 days of support. So they have closed border, and I think their intention remains unless they see that there is no new case over say another fortnight or 3 weeks. Then there is speculation that they may try with some of the Pacific islands or Australia, because there are a lot of things go between New Zealand and Australia. But otherwise, they are not looking at opening their borders so soon.
But do you think there are any chances of, because here Minister Hardeep Puri has been indicating that by mid-August, India is looking at resumption of certain flights with certain countries. Will that be a possibility with New Zealand? Is that something that's on the talks?
I also saw a press statement, but as of now, we are geared up to repatriating our people. There are some 3,000 Indians stuck here. Under Vande Bharat mission, we have got 9 Air India flights throughout this month, and our first flight was only last week, and this will continue up to 30th June. So what we are doing, the people stranded here, they are going to India, and when flights are departing from India, the flights are also bringing the Kiwis who are stranded in several parts of India. So this has been a two-way process, and by the end of this month, we hope to have repatriated most of the stranded people.
Give us also a sense, High Commissioner, of the kind of cooperation that has happened between India and New Zealand in terms of, the research work, or we've seen the cooperation on the front of HCQ, though there have also been, conflicting reports that have now been coming in on whether it is relevant, irrelevant to the treatment. But by and large, what has been the cooperation like, and what has been your feedback to the headquarters back here in terms of what are the lessons that India can learn from the New Zealand story?
We have been collaborating with each other. A few weeks back, our minister, external affairs minister, had a telephonic conversation with their deputy prime minister. In fact, he has visited India towards the end of February. So they had just met, and when the crisis hit, they were in touch telephonically. New Zealand was dependent on us on supply of some pharmaceutical products, and when they raised with us, we took it up with the Delhi, and that supply continued. Apart from that, select countries of the Indo-Pacific, they were in touch for a month at the foreign secretary level, and New Zealand was part of that group. Under which they discussed several aspects, supply chain, and how countries can deal with the crisis, how countries can cooperate within the WHO framework. So we have been in touch, and lately how to repatriate nationals of each other countries under Vande Bharat mission. So I would say we have been cooperating with each other as friendly and reliable partner.
I mean, one of the highlights of the relationship is also the sporting ties, in particular when it comes to the passion for cricket. Between
That's
countries
right.
like India, New Zealand, Australia, the Kiwis missing their good matches. What do they really sort of foresee it as to be the future of sporting relations, given the fact that coronavirus is going to be here for several months to come, perhaps?
In fact, we just had the Indian cricket team here in January.
Yes.
Until 5th of March, they just left New Zealand a few days before they closed their borders. So they were lucky. No, here, they love rugby. And in fact, today I was reading in the newspaper that they are going to start the domestic series soon. So yes, yes.
Will it
Here
be a
now
similar
there is
format that no spectators in the stadium? What has been
no,
said
no,
in India?
no. Let me clarify. There is no restrictions on gathering. There are no restriction on domestic travel. In fact, this 21st June, we are going to have our International Day of Yoga, as we were doing in the previous years. So
Okay.
perhaps New Zealand would be one of the first countries where we are going to celebrate International Day of Yoga in the usual manner. So their state, yes, now you can have a congregation of thousands of people. There's no restriction. Only restriction is the border remains closed.
Now that's very heartening to hear. So, just final question, High Commissioner Pardeshi, on the question of China. We have seen the kind of conversations happening around the globe. Also, there's a sense that perhaps be it the boardrooms in the Silicon Valley or the MNCs in Europe, they are the ones who will, in a way, hold China accountable, even if the multilateral institutions do not. And we have also seen China threaten countries like Australia, New Zealand with trade consequences if they continue to persist to ask for a probe into the origin of the virus. What is the conversation around China like when it comes to the government in New Zealand or, in fact, the corporate houses there as well?
Well, the fact remains that New Zealand has a deep-rooted relationship with China, which has developed over the last, I would say, a decade or so. They have a free trade agreement, and China is their largest trading partner. But in the context of the global pandemic, there is a growing realization that over reliance on one partner country may not be the best thing for the future. So, over reliance on one particular country and not diversifying their market. These two things have been noted by the CEOs and the business community, and I see commentaries appearing in the newspaper that in post COVID-19 situation, New Zealand perhaps will look at diversifying its sources of supply and also new markets.
So just finally, because India faced a lot of issues when it came to faulty testing kits from China, though we continue to source them from China. Considering that New Zealand has dealt with it so successfully, and I'm assuming that New Zealand really ramped up its testings, because of which it was able to manage this crisis far better than others. So was New Zealand also, is it still sourcing, testing kits, the PPE kits from Chinese sources, or are there other, in fact, options that they're looking out for?
No, they source from outside, they also produce here, but I don't think that that was a major issue here.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, High Commissioner Muktesh Pardeshi. I'm sure that it's a learning experience, not just for you, but for the entire world, to try and see of what we can do and maybe use the New Zealand model, the models from other countries that have successfully dealt with COVID, despite the differences in actually the sizes of population or geographical, in fact, spread, and try and see how the countries can come together to fight COVID-19. Many thanks. Be safe. Be strong.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Smita.
And for all of you who joined into this conversation here in New Delhi for ETV Bharat, this is Smita Sharma.